Well, shalom, shalom. Welcome, welcome, world changers. Thank you, Hannah, for the beautiful music. That was beautiful, beautiful as always. Thank you for blessing us with your talent. Okay, well, tonight we're diving back into 1 Samuel, and we're going to read 1 Samuel chapter 25, 26, 27. We're coming up to the end of the book of 1 Samuel. Now, this book is a different name in the Orthodox Bibles. I believe they call this book 1 Kings. Actually, in what we would call normal Bibles or regular Bibles, we got 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, 1 Kings, 2 Kings. But in the Orthodox Bible, there is 1 Kings, First Kingdoms, I should say. First Kingdoms, Second Kingdoms, Third Kingdoms, and Fourth Kingdoms. Same books, it's just different names. I pray that everything that we share here today would be a great blessing to you. Increase your knowledge of the Scriptures, your knowledge of the things of heaven, your relationship with God, and your knowledge of the truth. Amen, amen, amen. Well, folks, are you getting ready for the fast this coming week? This coming Sunday, actually. Sunday, November 9th, 10th, and 11th. We're going to start our 3-day fast. Going to be a full fast. I encourage everyone who can join to join. And please do not fast unless you know that you can safely fast. Some people can't. There are various medical conditions and, there are different things that people deal with. For example, if you're pregnant or something like that, certainly don't fast. Okay. I saw a little bit of a glitch or something here on the screen. I don't know what's going on with that. I hope everything is kosher. So anyways, hopefully that is not going to continue through the night. So, before you fast, before you join with us in fasting, please make sure you double check with your doctor to make sure that you can safely do that, and always follow your doctor's instructions. I'm not a medical professional, so don't deem anything that I say to be quote unquote medical advice. Having said that, if you can fast, join with us and fast this coming Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. I am going to be refraining from eating. If you can't fast as per typical fast, you can always fast something. Like you can always refrain from, any kind of normal, regular thing that you might do on a Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday. Maybe you like to go shopping on Sunday or something like that, or maybe maybe you like to. You like to go out or do stuff like that, something that's not necessarily, vital to your health, or vital to, you might say, well, it is, but, maybe you can fast from, certain, fast from watching movies or something, fast from Netflix or something like that. Whatever you are led to do, you don't have to fast. You don't have to refrain from food. But it can be anything else, any other pleasure. You might want to even ask God in prayer, Father, show me, what can I fast? What can I fast this coming Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday? Maybe you can safely, refrain from eating, but maybe you can do something else as well. All right, well, make sure you let everyone know about the fast that's coming up here. We're going to do what we did before. We're going to break from our regular scripture readings during the fast, and we're going to talk about fasting. We're going to pray as much as possible. And that reminds me, if you have any prayer requests, send your prayer requests to this address, Christopher Enoch at proton.me, Christopher Enoch at proton.me, and I will remember you in prayer. If you don't want me to talk about your prayer request publicly, you can just say, please keep this private, and I will certainly respect that. All right, folks. And on Thursday, Lord willing, we'll be doing live music again. We're working on a new song, and I'm hoping that the new song will be ready for Thursday. You never know how things go, when it comes to these kind of things. We're kind of living on the edge right now, the cutting edge of these kind of things. So regardless of the fact whether it's going to be a new song or not, we're looking at doing live music on Thursday and on Monday as well during the fast. All right, so let's see what we have here in the live chat. We have Calamento says shalom to all. Chipmunk says shalom everyone. Al says shalom everyone from YouTube. And then on Kick, Al says shalom brother from Kick. I'll keep protecting your Kick channel. Thank you, Al. Appreciate that. Thank you. Much appreciated. And Felix says hi friends. Seek the Lord says shalom. Chipmunk says, wonderful job, Hannah. All right. I think we got everybody. Shalom, shalom. Welcome and blessings to y'all. Blessings multiplied to you and your families. Well, let's dive into this. And we'll get into 1 Samuel chapter 25. If you know of anybody that loves to read the scriptures and loves to talk about the scriptures like this, maybe, somebody that you know of that would just love to learn some more about, quote unquote, the Bible, share the live stream with them. Share. We're going to read 1 Samuel chapter 25, 26, 27. Plus, we're also going to read Psalm 54 and 1 Chronicles chapter 12, verses 1 through 22. Lord willing, we'll see how it goes. Okay, I noticed that my screen here was flashing again. I hope that changes here. All right, so here we are. This is 1 Samuel chapter 25. This is our outline, and this is our scriptures here. We're going to read from the WEB Bible, as we usually do. For the most part, we're also going to compare this with the Septuagint, the Brenton Septuagint to be exact, and the HPBT, otherwise known as the Holy Peshitta Bible Translation, or the Holy Bible Peshitta Translated. And it's otherwise known as the Syriac, and we're going to read that'll be the English translation of the Syriac/Aramaic. Okay, so tonight we examine a critical phase in David's life, moving from his time as a fugitive chieftain in Judah to his complex role as a vassal in Philistine territory. We will analyze the interplay of Iron Age politics, survival strategies, and theological concepts, paying close attention to the historical context and significant textual variations across the major manuscript traditions. From wilderness chieftain to Philistine vassal. 1 Samuel chapter 25, Nabal and Abigail. Verse 1, Samuel died, and all Israel gathered themselves together and mourned for him and buried him at his house in Ramah. Then David arose and went down to the wilderness of Paran. Okay, already we have a manuscript variation in this verse. If you go over to the, oh boy, I see it's still flashing here. I'm going to have to try to fix this. I hope I don't mess things up here. If we go over to the Brenton Septuagint, you'll see here that there is a difference. Okay, so the WEB, or the Masoretic text, says that David arose and went down to the wilderness of Paran. In the Septuagint, it says that David arose and went down to the wilderness of Maon, instead of Paran. So this changes the geographical setting immediately following Samuel's death. Maon is near Nabal's home territory, which is around Carmel, whereas Paran is significantly further south, affecting the perceived scope of David's movements during his exile. Okay, you know what, folks? If you can just give me a moment, I'm going to see if I can fix this problem with my camera here. Just give me a second here. I hope it's not going to mess things up. Okay, we'll see how that works. Thank you for your patience, folks. I appreciate that. Okay, so we got a significant variant right off the bat. The first verse, Paran in one verse in the Masoretic Hebrew text, and then the more ancient, the older Septuagint says Maon. The Peshitta now says Paran. All right. Let's go to verse, well, before we do that, we'll read this here. So, the death of Samuel, historical translation. This brief notice marks the definitive end of an era. Samuel was the bridge between the decentralized period of the judges and the centralized monarchy. His death leaves a profound spiritual and political vacuum, removing the primary prophetic authority and further isolating Saul. Okay. Verse 2. There was a man in Maon. Okay, so look at this. So in the Masoretic, it goes from Paran to Maon right away, whereas in the Septuagint, it stays in Maon, which makes a lot more sense. As usual, the Septuagint usually reads smoother, makes more sense. That's not always a good thing, by the way. I mean, this is usually, not always, usually the sign of manipulation of the text. Usually a more quote-unquote original text would be a lot rougher around the edges. And so, when it's transmitted, scribes would tend to change things to make it a little bit, easier to understand, a little bit smoother in reading. That's typically what happens. So I'm not saying this is what happened in the Septuagint, but that's typically the case. All right, so back to verse 2. There was a man in Maon whose possessions were in Carmel. And the man was very great. He had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, and he was shearing his sheep in Carmel. Now the name of the man was Nabal, the name of his wife Abigail. This woman was intelligent. You might wonder why it says this, and if you know what Nabal means, then you'll understand. So, in the scriptures, names were not just names as we know them today. Names were actual words that really meant something. Not so much today, like especially in, the culture, Western culture. You have a name like my name, for example, Christopher. You would say, well, his name is Christopher, but really, actually, Christopher is actually a Greek word that means Christ bearer. That's what it means. And today we have a lot of people that name their children based upon what, they they say, oh, this name sounds good, or this name, I like this name, meaning I like the sound of it. Maybe it's of a celebrity or a politician or somebody that has that name and you like that, or maybe one of your friends or maybe one of your family members or an ancient has this name and you like it. And it's like a lot of people, they don't think much about the meaning of the name, but they just like the sound of it. That's how a lot of people name their children today. Not in the ancient days, though. They actually used real, like, Hebrew words that meant something. It wasn't like how it is today. Nabal means fool. So this is why we have this here. When it comes to Abigail, this woman was intelligent because, those who knew the Hebrew knew that Nabal means fool. So it literally read this in verse 3. Now the name of the man was Fool. That's literally what it said. The name of the man was Fool. And the name of his wife, Abigail, which means father's joy, this woman was intelligent. Yeah, so they have to say that because, well, look at her husband's a fool. This woman was intelligent and had a beautiful face, but the man was surly and evil in his doings. He was of the house of Caleb. Well, folks, we have another problem here. The wow fact, Nabal the fool, and the dog pun. Name etymology. Nabal literally means fool or ignoble. In Hebrew narrative, names often signify character. The Calebite connection and the textual variation. Nabal is identified as a Calebite, a prestigious clan. However, the Hebrew word for Calebite is strikingly similar to the word for dog, Kalev. Hubert says, fool? Uh-oh, not good. Yeah, really. No wonder they had to say, his wife, she's intelligent, okay? Just FYI, she's intelligent, but this guy, he's a fool. Hubert says, who would name their child Fool? Was it a nickname? Very good question, Hubert. It's like, we don't know. You never know. Maybe he wasn't named that at birth. I can't imagine that to be his name at birth. Maybe he quote unquote earned that name. Maybe it was a nickname after a while. It doesn't really tell us, and it's hard to say. Can you imagine having a baby? Oh, look at the cute little baby. What are you going to name the baby? Fool. We'll call this baby Fool. We'll call him Fool. You never know, but I mean, I can't see that being the case. Oh, it's a cute baby. What's the baby's name? Fool. Okay. Cute name. All right, so in the WEB, from the Masoretic text, we have Peshitta and the Peshitta as well. Interpret this primarily as the lineage of the house of Caleb. In the Brenton, in the Septuagint, it describes him as a cynical man, meaning dog-like or surly. So that is amazing. So the analysis here, the text likely contains a deliberate pun. We don't get this in the English, right? Or those people who don't really know this whole thing about Hebrew names and how there's different wordplay that goes on in these names. So the text likely contains a deliberate pun. Nabal possesses a noble lineage, Calebite, but exhibits a base, dog-like character. Let's have a look ourselves here in the Brenton. The Brenton Septuagint says, and the man's name was Nabal, and his wife's name was Abigail. A little bit different than Abigail. And his wife was of good understanding. Well, yeah, you got to put that in there, that's for sure. Protect her from her husband's name. You got to do that. And a very beautiful person. Very beautiful in person. It's good. But the man was harsh and evil in his doings, and the man was churlish. Wow, okay. So it doesn't say anything about Caleb here in the Septuagint. The Peshitta, wow, look at this. The Peshitta says, and Nabal was hard and evil in his deeds and behaved like a dog. Behaved like a dog. It says right there. So, yeah, Houston, we have a problem. We have in the Masoretic text, it says the house of Caleb. Who knew? How many people would figure it out? If you're reading the typical King James, New King James, English Bibles that are based upon the Masoretic text, you wouldn't see this. You wouldn't see this. From the house of Caleb versus churlish or behave like a dog. Okay, verse 4. Verse 4. David heard in the wilderness that Nabal was shearing his sheep. I wonder, you know what that would sound like in the Hebrew? It's like, hey, Dave, you hear about that fool? There's a fool out there in the wilderness shearing his sheep. Nabal. David sent 10 young men, and David said to the young men, go up to Carmel and go to Nabal and greet him in my name. Tell him, long life to you, peace be to you, peace be to your house, peace be to all that you have. Now I have heard that you have shearers, that your shepherds have now been with us, and we didn't harm them. Nothing was missing from them all the time they were in Carmel. Ask your young men, and they will tell you. Therefore, let the young men find favor in your eyes, for we come on a good day. Please give whatever comes to your hand to your servants and to your son David. Okay, notice here. It says, David said to the young men, go up to Carmel and go to Nabal and greet him in my name. And then David gives them like a script, basically. Tell him, quote, yada, yada, yada. We just read all this. But notice it doesn't say anywhere in this script that they are to literally verbalize David's, I come to you, Nabal, in the name of David. No. So David sends the men to Nabal in his name. It doesn't mean that they say in the name of David. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means that they go and do his work. They ask it on his behalf. So likewise, in the name of Yeshua, in the name of Jesus, doesn't necessarily mean that you say in the name of Yeshua or in the name of Jesus. It doesn't mean that. It just means that you do what he wants you to do. You say what he wants you to say. And if you do that, then you are indeed doing, speaking in his name. And you don't even have to say his name. Just like here, they didn't have to say, I come to you in the name of David. Jody says, Shalom all, not in the Tanakh, but it mentions Abigail as one of the prophetesses in Megillah 14a in the Babylonian Talmud. Sarah, Miriam, Deborah, Hannah, Abigail, Huldah, and Esther. Pretty cool. Well, shalom, shalom, Jody. Good to see you. Blessings multiplied to you and your family. That's amazing, Jody. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Very interesting. A prophetess, Abigail. Awesome. Good stuff. Thank you for sharing that little gold nugget there. Okay. So in verses 4 to 8, the shearing festival and protection services, cultural context, sheep shearing was a major annual festival characterized by feasting and an expectation of generosity. Political reality. David is operating as a political local chieftain. His request is not begging. It is a demand for tribute or quote-unquote protection money in exchange for guarding Nabal's flocks. Verses 15 to 16. We'll read that a little bit later. This was a standard practice for paramilitary groups in this period. Okay, verse 9. When David's young men came, they spoke to Nabal all those words in the name of David and waited. Nabal answered David's servants and said, "Who is David? Who is the son of Jesse? There are many servants who break away from their masters these days." Okay, well, in this verse, the calculated insult. So Nabal deliberately equates David with a common runaway servant, Eved. This is a calculated political move to deny David's growing status and reject his claim to authority in the region. So Nabal is living up to his name already, because as a fool, he is insulting the man of God, David. He's insulting him in this pride that he has, in this ego that he is exhibiting here. Verse 11. Okay, verse 11. Shall I then take my bread, my water, and my meat that I have killed for my shearers, and give it to the men who I don't know where they come from? So David's young men turned on their way and went back and came and told him all these words. David said to his men, "Every man put on his sword." Every man put on his sword. David also put on his sword. About 400 men followed David, and 200 stayed by the baggage. Verse 14. But one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, saying, "Behold, David sent messengers out of the wilderness to greet our master, and he insulted them. But the men were very good to us, and we were not harmed, and we didn't miss anything as long as we went with them when we were in the fields. They were a wall to us both by night and by day, all the while we were with them keeping the sheep. Now therefore know and consider what you will do. For evil is determined against our master and against all his house, for he is such a worthless fellow that one can't speak to him." Don't you find that's the case with a lot of fools? It's difficult to speak to fools. They won't listen. Full of pride. Verse 18. Then Abigail turned and took 200 loaves of bread, 2 containers of wine, 5 sheep ready dressed, 5 seahs of parched grain, 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 cakes of figs, and laid them on donkeys. She said to her young men, "Go on before me. Behold, I am coming after you." But she didn't tell her husband Nabal. As she rode on her donkey and came down hidden by the mountain, behold, David and his men came down toward her, and she met them. Now David had said, "Surely in vain I have kept all that this fellow has in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that pertained to him. He has returned me evil for good. God do so to the enemies of David, and more also, if I leave of all that belongs to him by the morning light so much as one who urinates on a wall." Okay, this is, as we read here, a vulgar oath and textual sanitization. David's oath reveals the intensity of his anger, but the wording varies significantly across traditions. In the Masoretic text, David vows not to leave, quote, one who urinates against a wall. Linguistic analysis: this Hebrew idiom is a graphic and vulgar expression referring specifically to males. It emphasizes the total annihilation of Nabal's household. Now, then we have the textual variation. The Septuagint and the Peshitta sanitize the text, translating it simply as one male. Let's have a look. So that's verse 22. So the last phrase of verse 22 in the Masoretic text says, "one who urinates on a wall." The Septuagint says, "if I leave one male of all that belong to Nabal until the morning." So this is a good example of what we're talking about just the last couple of days, of translators that don't necessarily translate, they interpret for you. I remember, I used to be, as much as like a lot of other people, that they were like so much into biblical literalism. Like, you have to take every word literally in the Bible, but you don't know. A lot of these people don't know, because nobody's talking about it, that your English translation, and even if it's not English, you got the Hebrew Masoretic text, for example, or the Greek Septuagint here, that and the Peshitta, the Aramaic, it's not literal. It's not even translated literal. It's actually interpreted for you. One male of all that belong to Nabal until morning. So the Peshitta, going down here to verse 22, again, "and thus he will add to him anything everything he has that forms a wall." Well, that's different. "Forms a wall will be left until the morning." Well, that's pretty weird, isn't it? So the Aramaic, the Peshitta, says, "and thus he will add to him if anything he has that forms a wall will be left until the morning." The Septuagint says, "if I leave one male, all that belong to Nabal until the morning." And the Masoretic text says, "if I leave all that belongs to him by the morning light, so much as one who urinates on a wall." So that's weird. So we got the Peshitta, like, talking about simply about just the wall, forms a wall. We got the Septuagint talking about the male, only says male, one male, and the Masoretic is it seems like almost like a weird hybrid between the two. Okay. Here's the thing as well. So In the first part of verse 22, God do so to the enemies of David. In the Septuagint, it just simply says, so God do to David, and the more also. So that's a significant difference. And then the Peshitta says, thus may the Lord Jehovah do to his servant David. So this verse, this is 1 Samuel chapter 25, verse 22. This verse has multiple significant variations between the text. The first half of the verse is significant in its variation between the Masoretic Septuagint and Peshitta, and also the last half of the verse also is significant in its variation. Isn't that interesting? Right. So in regards to the last half of it, the Septuagint and the Peshitta sanitize the text, translating it simply as one male. Scholarly insight: the Masoretic text preserves the raw, gritty language of the warrior culture, while later translations demonstrate a tendency by scribes to clean up language deemed offensive for a sacred text. All right, well, let's move on. Verse 23, and that's a Peshitta. Verse 23, the Masoretic text, and when Abigail saw David, she hurried and got off her donkey and fell before David on her face and bowed herself to the ground. She fell at his feet and said, "Oh, on me, my lord, on me be the blame. Please let your servant speak in your ears. Hear the words of your servant. Please don't let my lord pay attention to this worthless fellow Nabal." Well, that's quite the way to talk about your husband. Don't pay attention to this worthless fellow, Nabal. As his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, your servant, didn't see my lord's young men whom you sent. Verse 26. Now therefore, my lord, as Yahweh lives and as your soul lives, since Yahweh has withheld from you blood guiltiness and from avenging yourself with your own hand, now therefore let your enemies and those who seek evil to my lord be as Nabal. Now this present which your servant has brought to my lord, let it be given to the young men who follow my lord. Please forgive the trespass of your servant, for Yahweh will certainly make my lord a sure house, because my lord fights Yahweh's battles. Evil will not be found in you all your days. Though men may rise up to pursue you and to seek your soul, yet the soul of my Lord will be bound in the bundle of life with Yahweh your God. He will sling out the souls of your enemies as from a sling's pocket. So we go over here to note here. So the phrase, the soul of my Lord shall be bound up in the bundle of the living with Yahweh your God. This metaphor likely refers to a secure container where valuable items or documents were kept for safekeeping, like a royal treasury. It is a powerful image of divine protection and security. Verse 30, It will come to pass, when Yahweh has done to my Lord according to all the good news which he has spoken concerning you, and has appointed you prince over Israel, that this shall be no grief to you, nor offense of heart to my Lord, either that you have shed blood without cause, or that my Lord has avenged himself. When Yahweh has dealt with my Lord, then remember your servant. Okay, the prevention of bloodshed. Abigail warns David against incurring blood guilt. In Israelite theology, unjust bloodshed polluted the individual and invited divine retribution. Abigail acts to preserve the moral integrity of David's future reign. Verse 32, David said to Abigail, "Blessed is Yahweh, the God of Israel, who sent you today to meet me. Blessed is your discretion, and blessed are you who have kept me today from blood guiltiness and from avenging myself with my own hand. For indeed, as Yahweh, the God of Israel, lives, who has withheld me from harming you, unless you had hurried and come to meet me, surely there would have been left to Nabal by the morning light so much as one who urinates on a wall." So there we go again. Verse 35, David receives from her hand that which she had brought him. Then he said to her, "Go up in peace to your house. Behold, I have listened to your voice and have granted your request." Abigail came to Nabal, and behold, he held a feast in his house like the feast of a king. Nabal's heart was merry within him, for he was very drunk. Therefore she told him nothing until the morning light. In the morning, when the wine had gone out of Nabal, his wife told him all these things, and his heart died within him, and he became as a stone. About 10 days later, Yahweh struck Nabal so that he died. Wow. So you notice there's two different things here. His heart died within him. And again, this is not a literal thing. This would be talking about his spirit or his conscience, if you will. His heart dying within him so that he became a stone. So this is like spiritually dying. And then 10 days later, he physically died as Yahweh struck him at that point in time. Verse 39, when David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, "Blessed is Yahweh, who has pleaded the cause of my reproach from the hand of Nabal, and has kept back his servant from evil. Yahweh has returned the evil doing of Nabal on his own head." David sent and spoke concerning Abigail to take her to himself as wife. When David's servants had come to Abigail to Carmel, they spoke to her, saying, "David has sent us to you to take you to him as wife." She arose and bowed herself with her face to the earth and said, "Behold, your servant is a servant to wash the feet of the servants of my Lord." Abigail hurriedly arose and rode on a donkey with her 5 maids who followed her, and she went after the messengers of David and became his wife. David also took Ahinoam of Jezreel, and they both became his wives. Now Saul had given Michal his daughter, David's wife, to Palti the son of Laish, who was of Galim. Okay, verse 44, we have another point of discussion. So Saul giving Michal to Palti is a calculated political move. It is a public revocation of David's status as son-in-law to the king, severing his legal claim to the royal house. Not only that, but we also have a manuscript variation, because Here we see where it says, David gave Michal to Palti, the son of Laish, who was of Galim. In the Septuagint, it says, Saul gave Michal, his daughter, David's wife, to Phalti, the son of Amis, who was of Ramah. Phalti, the son of Amis, who was of Ramah. So the identity of the man and his father or place of origin varies significantly here. Amis of Ramah versus Lish or Laish of Galim. This alters the precise historical figures involved. Okay. First Samuel chapter 26, verses 1 through 4, and then we're going to go over to Psalm 54 after this. Okay, well, I'm going to read verses 1 through 5, seeing that this is a whole entire paragraph. 1 Samuel chapter 26, verse 1, and the Ziphites come out of the dry country to Saul, to the hill, saying, Behold, David hides himself with us in the hill of Abigail, opposite Yesimon. Okay, so this Yesimon, this is the Septuagint. The Brenton reads differently. The Brenton actually translates the name Yeshimon to, quote unquote, the desert. So in the Masoretic, it says the Ziphites. This is the WEB version of the Masoretic. The Ziphites came to Saul to Gibeah, saying, Doesn't David hide himself in the hill of Hakilah, which is before the desert? Now compare that with the Septuagint. The Ziphites came out of the dry country. In the Masoretic, it says, came to Saul to Gibeah. And in the Septuagint, it says to Saul to the hill, saying, Behold, David hides himself with us in the hill of Abigail, which is similar to the Masoretic, WEB Masoretic. Doesn't David hide himself in the hill of Hakilah? But the last phrase here, opposite Yesimon, in the Septuagint, it is literally translated in the WEB Masoretic text, which is before the desert. The Peshitta says Ashimon. Okay, verse 2. Then Saul arose and went down to the wilderness of Ziph, having 3,000 chosen men of Israel with him, to seek David in the wilderness of Ziph. Saul encamped in the hill of Hakilah, which is before the desert by the way, but David stayed in the wilderness, and he saw that Saul came after him into the wilderness. David therefore sent out spies and understood that Saul had certainly come. Then David arose and came to the place where Saul had encamped, and David saw the place where Saul lay with Abner, the son of Ner, the captain of his army. Saul lay within the place of the wagons, and the people were encamped around him. Another variation here in verse 4. So in verse 4, it says, in the Septuagint, David, well, look at, all right, so it says in the Septuagint, David sent spies and ascertained that Saul was come prepared out of Keilah. The Masoretic text says, just simply understood that Saul had certainly come. The Peshitta And David sent spies and knew that Saul came after him. So in the Septuagint, we have specifically was come prepared out of Keilah, not found in the Masoretic, not found in the Peshitta. So this additional geographical detail regarding Saul's movements, specifying that he had prepared his expedition starting from Keilah, which is not found in the typical Hebrew Masoretic text. Jody says, Abigail was sent from God, prophesying David's greatness to him, bringing him wisdom and humility to not take matters into his own hands. This is precisely what Saul did, and it was against God's will. She pleaded with David to not seek bloodshed, reminding him that vengeance belongs to Adonai, not to him. Awesome. Yes. Very good. Very good. You'd wonder how this wonderful woman of God, Abigail, prophetess, would ever get involved with a man by the name of Nabal. Awesome insight, Jody. Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. So the verses 1 through 4, we just read the second betrayal at Ziph. Source criticism, the doublet problem. This narrative strongly parallels 1 Samuel chapter 23, verse 19, and the events of chapter 24. Scholars debate whether this represents two separate historical events or two different literary traditions, a doublet of the same event. The repetition emphasizes the constant danger David faced even within his own tribe of Judah. Okay, well, let's go to Psalm 54. We are reading the text here in chronological order. It makes so much difference. If you read, quote unquote, the Bible, as it is printed, from cover to cover, you can easily get lost. But if you read it chronologically, if you have a really good chronological reading plan, it's a lot easier to piece things together chronologically. How it happened, how it unfolded, when did Isaiah come into the picture? When did Rehoboam come into the picture? When did Daniel come into the picture? A lot of these things that we don't know. It's almost like reading Matthew and then reading Mark and then reading Luke and then reading John. It's like, but people who don't know any better, and they want to read the New Testament from cover to cover, they'll read Matthew, and then when they get to Mark, they're like, oh, now we're back in the beginning again. Okay, so this is a different point of view. It's the same story over again. And then they get to Luke. Oh, here we go again. The problem with that is, if you don't have it side by side, if you don't really compare them, if you don't read the text in chronological order, it's very difficult to pick out the differences and the discrepancies and sometimes even the contradictions. And it's kind of hard to follow the narrative and the story. So this is the way it is with First Samuel, Second Samuel, First Kings, Second Kings, First Chronicles, Second Chronicles, and all these other Psalms that kind of, they fit in there throughout the story. Once we get into, we're going to touch on Chronicles tonight, but once we get deeper into it, you watch in the next few weeks, it is going to be a wild ride. It's going to be a wild ride. It's one of my most memorable things over the past 3-4 years of doing live streams like this and reading through the text, especially chronologically. It's one of the most memorable things for me, comparing First and Second Chronicles with the other texts and how much different, like it's really different. It's talking about the same event, but it's really different. Contradictions, a lot of them, even within the very same manuscript, let alone the other manuscripts. Okay, so we're on Psalm 54 right now. Psalm 54, verse 1 for the chief musician on stringed instruments, a contemplation by David when the Ziphites came and said to Saul, "Isn't David hiding himself among us? Save me, God, by your name. Vindicate me in your might. Hear my prayer, God. Listen to the words of my mouth. For strangers have risen up against me. Violent men have sought after my soul. They haven't set God before them. Selah. Behold, God is my helper. The Lord is the one who sustains my soul. He will repay the evil to my enemies, destroy them in your truth." Look at that. With a free will offering, I will sacrifice to you. I will give thanks to your name, Yahweh, for it is good. For he has delivered me out of all troubles. Out of all trouble, my eye has seen triumph over my enemies. Okay, talk about this a little bit. So, superstition context, where it says, when the Ziphites came and said to Saul, "Doesn't David hide himself among us?" So in verse 3, the identity of the so-called strangers. So we read there from the WEB, based upon the Masoretic text, it says, "For strangers have risen up against me." Theological analysis. The Ziphites were fellow Judahites. The Hebrew word used here, zarim, strangers/foreigners, is striking. It signifies that their treacherous behavior has rendered them functionally and theologically alien to the covenant community. The wow fact, a scribal slip. There is a significant textual variation here. Some Hebrew manuscripts read arrogant ones, that's zadim, instead of strangers, zarim. Now that is interesting. Linguistic insight. In Hebrew script, the difference between zarim and zadim is minuscule. The letter resh versus dalet. This is a common type of scribal error. Both readings fit the context, highlighting the complex transmission of the text. So we have already dealt with this so far, even in the Torah, in the 5 books of Moses itself, especially in the book of Genesis. Remember that? Where we have identified scribal errors. We know that there are scribal errors because there's certain names and words that have a dalet here, and this manuscript uses a dalet. The other manuscript uses a resh. Now, take a look at I know it's difficult to see this on small devices. If you're watching this on a cell phone, you may be able to pinch zoom this. But it says here, like the letter resh. See that there, the Hebrew letter resh? See what it looks like? And the letter dalet looks very much like that over there. Okay? The only difference between the letter resh and the letter dalet is a square corner versus a rounded corner. Now, if a scribe accidentally just moved the quill a little bit too much, it might look like a dalet when it's supposed to be a resh. Or if a scribe was a little bit on he was hurrying a little bit too much, or maybe he's a little bit on the lazy side. Instead of making that corner pronounced, he kind of made it like rounded. Then you would think the dalet was a resh. So that makes the zarim, the zadim, that takes it from strangers to arrogant ones. It seems to me like arrogant ones would fit the bill just as much, if not better, than strangers in that text. All right. Amazing. Okay, let's go back to 1 Samuel chapter 26. All right, we're at verse 6 now. Then David answered and said to Ahimelech the Hittite and to Abishai the son of Zeruiah, brother of Joab, saying, Who will go down with me to Saul to the camp? Abishai said, I will go down with you. So David and Abishai came to the people by night, and behold, Saul lay sleeping within the place of the wagons, with his spear stuck in the ground at his head, and Abner and the people lay around him. Okay, so in the text here, in the Septuagint, instead of saying that Saul was sleeping within the place of the wagons, watch this, it says that Saul was fast asleep in the chariot. The Peshitta is even different yet. The Peshitta says that Saul slept in the road. The Peshitta, the ancient Aramaic, the ancient Syriac text, dating back to the early centuries, says Shaul slept in the road, whereas the Septuagint, dating back arguably before that, over 2,000 years, says Saul was asleep in the chariot. That, I don't know if that would be possible or not. Maybe. And then the Masoretic text says Saul lay sleeping within the place of the wagons, whatever that means. Think about that. So that is a significant difference. The description of Saul's vulnerability changes based on the setting. Sleeping within the chariot, that suggests a specific military vehicle. Sleeping inside the wagons or the baggage train or in amongst the place of the wagons suggests a defensive perimeter, whereas in the Peshitta just slept in the road. This portrays a very highly exposed place. And then we also have, if that's not enough, we have the Brenton Septuagint, and the Masoretic text places the spear, his spear stuck in the ground at his head. The Septuagint, his spear was stuck in the ground near his head. The Peshitta, his scepter spear was lying on the ground beside him. So this changes the visual detail and the effort required to retrieve the spear. Sticking the spear at his head upright acts as a marker for the king's presence, while just merely lying beside him here portrays less organization and security. So the Peshitta really puts Saul in a very vulnerable position, very vulnerable that the scepter is not even in sight. And in the Masoretic text and the Septuagint portray a more secure position. Okay, verse 8, I'm reading from the WEB. Then Abishai said to David, God has delivered up your enemy into your hand today. Now, therefore, please let me strike him with the spear to the earth at one stroke, and I will not strike him the second time. David said to Abishai, "Don't destroy him, for who can stretch out his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless?" So again, David is respecting Saul, regardless of his sin, regardless of his pride. It doesn't matter. If God's Spirit is on Saul, if God chose Saul to be king, don't touch him. Keep your hands off him. Treat him with the highest respect. And don't you wish that a lot of people today would be like this? You know, a lot of people speak so freely against other people, you know, within the body, within the family of God. A lot of people just, you know, it's so sad, and it's such a testament to the corruption that is set into the world today, that we have people that actually build a platform on attacking other brothers and sisters. It's like they have nothing better to do but to attack. I think isn't there something better to do than to slander other sisters and brothers in the faith? This is the problem. It's a very sad situation. Jody says, interesting, putting the fool with the prophetess. Also in Megillah 14b, it's suggested that God sometimes pairs a righteous woman with a wicked man and vice versa as part of his providence. So it seems like some sort of parallel or parable of folly versus wisdom, flesh versus spirit, pride versus humility. Amazing. Excuse me. This is awesome. Thank you again, Jody. Awesome stuff. You know what we should do? Let's go to Megillah 14b. Let's do this. This is really good. Thank you, Jody. Really appreciate your input here. It's awesome stuff. Okay. Yeah, so I'm going to go over to Sepharia, Megillah 14b, as Jody is referring here to in multiple occasions. So let's do this. It's worth reading. Megillah 14b, Nabal, your husband, is a rebel against the throne, as David had already been anointed as king by the prophet Samuel, and Nabal refused his orders. And therefore there is no need to try him, as a rebel is not accorded to ordinary prescriptions governing judicial proceedings. Abigail said to him, "You lack the authority to act in this manner. As Saul is still alive, he is the king in actual practice, and your seal, Tivaka, has not yet spread across the world. That is, your kingship is not yet known to all. Therefore, you are not authorized to try someone for rebelling against the monarchy." David accepted her words and said to her, quote, "And blessed be your discretion, and blessed be you who have kept me this day from coming to guiltiness. This is 1 Samuel chapter 25, verse 33. We just read that. The Gemara asks, the plural term damim, literally bloods, indicates two. Why did David not use the singular term dam, or dam, D-A-M? Rather, he teaches that Abigail revealed her thigh, and he lusted after her. And he went 3 parasangs by the fire of of his desire for her, and said to her, listen to me, and allow me to be intimate with you. Abigail then said to him, let this not be a stumbling block for you, in 1 Samuel chapter 25, verse 31. By inference from the word, quote unquote, this, it can be understood that this is someone else who will in fact be a stumbling block for him. And what is this referring to? The incident involving Bathsheba. And in the end, this is what was, and indeed, he stumbled with Bathsheba. This demonstrates that Abigail was a prophetess, and she knew that this would occur. This also explains why David blessed Abigail for keeping him from being responsible for 2 incidents involving blood that day: Abigail's menstrual blood and the shedding of Nabal's blood. Apropos, Abigail, the Gemara explains additional details in the story. Abigail said to David, quote, yet the soul of my Lord shall be bound in the bond of life with the Lord your God. 1 Samuel chapter 25, verse 29. And when she parted from him, she said to him, quote, and when the Lord shall have dealt well with my Lord, and you shall remember your handmaid. 1 Samuel 25:31. Rav Nachman said that this explains the folk saying that people say, while a woman is engaged in conversation, she also holds the spindle. That is, while a woman is engaged in one activity, she is already taking steps with regard to another. Abigail came to David in order to save her husband, not Nabal, but at the same time, she indicates that if her husband dies, David should remember her and marry her. And indeed, after Nabal's death, David took Abigail for his wife. Some say that Rav Nachman referred to a different saying. The goose stoops its head as it goes along, but its eyes look on from afar to find what it is looking for. So too, Abigail acted in a similar fashion. Huldah, the prophetess, as it is written. Huldah was a prophetess, as it is written. So Hilkiah the priest and Ahikam and Akbor and Shaphan and Isaiah went to Huldah the prophetess in 2 Kings 22:14. Okay, so I think that might be the end of the subject of Abigail. So I think what I'll do is I'll stop right there. Yeah, I don't see anything more about Abigail there from Abigail and David. Awesome stuff. Thanks again, Jody, for pointing that out in the Megillah 14b. Awesome. Appreciate that, Jody. Thank you. First Samuel 26, verse 9, and David said to Abishai, don't destroy him, for who can stretch out his hand against Yahweh's anointed and be guiltless? David said, as Yahweh lives, Yahweh will strike him, or his day shall come to die, or he shall go down into battle and perish. Yahweh forbid that I should stretch out my hand against Yahweh's anointed. But now take the spear that is at his head and the jar of water, and let's go. Verse 12, so David took the spear and the jar of water from Saul's head, and they went away. No man saw it or knew it, nor did any awake, for they were all asleep, because a deep sleep from Yahweh had fallen on them. In the notes, because a deep sleep from Yahweh had fallen on them, linguistic insight, the Hebrew word tardema is significant. It is not natural sleep. It is the same word used for the supernatural sleep that fell on Adam during the creation of Eve in Genesis 2, verse 21. and upon Abraham during the cutting of the covenant in Genesis 15, verse 12. This signifies a divinely induced state facilitating a significant event. Verse 13, then David went over to the other side and stood at the top of the mountain far away, and a great space being between them. And David cried to the people and to Abner, the son of Ner, saying, don't you answer, Abner? And Abner answered, who are you who calls to the king? David said to Abner, aren't you a man? Who is like you in Israel? Why then have you not kept watch over your lord the king? For one of the people came in to destroy your lord the king. This thing isn't good that you have done. As Yahweh lives, you are worthy to die, because you have not kept watch over your Lord, Yahweh's anointed. Now see where the king's spear is, and the jar of water that was at his head. Saul recognized David's voice and said, is this your voice, my son David? David said, it is my voice, my lord, O king. He said, why does my lord pursue his servant? For what have I done? What evil is in my hand? Now, therefore, please let my lord the king hear the words of his servant. If it is so that Yahweh has stirred you up against me, let him accept an offering. But if it is the children of men, they are cursed before Yahweh, for they have driven me out today, that I shouldn't cling to Yahweh's inheritance, saying, go serve other gods. Now, therefore, don't let my blood fall to the earth away from the presence of Yahweh, for the king of Israel has come out to seek a flea, and as when one hunts a partridge in the mountains. So this verse 19, you have a note. So this particular phrase, it says, for they have driven me out today, that I shouldn't cling to Yahweh's inheritance, saying, go serve other gods. Analysis. In the ancient Near East, deities were often considered territorial. To be exiled from Israel's land, Yahweh's inheritance, was tantamount to being forced outside of Yahweh's jurisdiction, compelling one to, quote, serve other gods, unquote. And then in verse 20, we have another textual variation. So it is the flea or my life. So in the WEB, following the Masoretic text, it says, for the king of Israel has come out to seek a flea. In the Septuagint, it says, for the king of Israel is come to seek my life. Well, that makes a whole lot more sense, doesn't it? I mean, you could say that David is just being super, super humble by saying, that the king has come out to seek a flea, calling himself a flea, more or less. But it just makes more sense. The Septuagint here, for the king of Israel is come out to seek my life. Analysis. While the Masoretic text, a flea, is a colorful insult emphasizing David's insignificance, used in 24 verse 14, the Septuagint reading, my life, arguably fits the immediate context of the preceding phrase, don't let my blood fall, more smoothly. Certainly does. Certainly does. Verse 21, then Saul said, I have sinned. Return, my son David, for I will no more do you harm, because my life was precious in your eyes today. Behold, I have played the fool, and have erred exceedingly. David answered, behold the spear, O king. Let one of the young men come over and get it. Yahweh will render to every man his righteousness and his faithfulness, because Yahweh delivered you into my hand today. And I wouldn't stretch out my hand against Yahweh's anointed. Verse 24, behold, as your life was respected today in my eyes, so let my life be respected in Yahweh's eyes, and let him deliver me out of all oppression. Then Saul said to David, you are blessed, my son David. You will both do mightily and will surely prevail. So David went his way, and Saul returned to his place. 1 Samuel 27, verse 1. David said in his heart, I will now perish one day by the hand of Saul. There is nothing better for me than I should escape into the land of the Philistines, and Saul will despair of me to seek me any more in all the borders of Israel. So I will escape out of his hand. David arose and passed over, he and the 600 men who were with him, to Achish, the son of Maoch, king of Gath. David lived with Achish at Gath, he and his men, every man with his household, even David with his 2 wives, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess and Abigail the Carmelitess, Nabal's wife. Saul was told that David had fled to Gath, so he stopped looking for him. Note, this second visit to Gath. The first was in 1 Samuel 21, is fundamentally different. David is no longer a lone fugitive feigning madness. He is a powerful warlord with 600 men. Political analysis, King Achish accepts David as a vassal, likely viewing him as a valuable military asset and a useful destabilizing force against Saul. Verse 5, David said to Achish, if now I have found favor in your eyes, let them give me a place in one of the cities in the country that I may dwell there. For why should your servant dwell in the royal city with you? Then Achish gave him Ziklag that day. Therefore Ziklag belongs to the kings of Judah to this day. The number of the days that David lived in the country of the Philistines was a full year and 4 months. Okay, so a couple things going on here. Verse 6, we have the wow fact, anachronism of Ziklag. So it says, therefore Ziklag pertains to the kings of Judah to this day. Historical criticism. This editorial comment is a clear anachronism. It presupposes the existence of the divided monarchy, the kings of Judah, as distinct from the kings of northern Israel, which occurred long after David's death, around 930 BC. This is strong evidence that the books of Samuel were compiled or edited centuries after the events described. And then we have a textual variation in verse 7. The duration of the stay. The WEB following the Masoretic text and the Peshitta they both say a full year and 4 months, 16 months. The Hebrew literally reads days and 4 months, days often idiomatically representing a year. The Brenton Septuagint says 4 months, period. That's it. Just 4 months. So this is a major chronological discrepancy. The Septuagint indicates a relatively short stay, while the Masoretic text, the Peshitta, indicate a much longer stay, literally 4 times as much, 16 months. This greatly affects the pacing of the narrative and the length of time David spent under Achish's protection. So, let's go on over to First Chronicles. Let me just pull this up here. First Chronicles chapter 12. And we're going to read the first 12 verses. First Chronicles. So why go over to First Chronicles? Well, this pertains to what we're just reading here. So we're starting with the Chronicles. We're going to read First Chronicles chapter 12, verses 1 through 22. First Chronicles chapter 12, verse 1. Now these are those who came to David to Ziklag while he was a fugitive from Saul, the son of Kish. They were among the mighty men, his helpers in war. Okay, well, immediately we have a problem here. Immediately we have a problem because we have textual variants already. Okay. The Peshitta. The Peshitta says, these are all the mighty men of David who were standing with him in battle. These entered Ziklag, the city with David, when he fled from before Shaul, the son of Kish, and all the men of David were standing in might. And if he chose, they would have killed Shaul, the son of Kish, because they were mighty men, and they were men warriors, and David chose not to allow them to kill Shaul. So this contains a significant addition explaining the mighty men's loyalty. It says, if he chose. So it's a major. See, look. Oh, sorry, folks. If you notice here, in this Peshitta, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines, whereas in the Masoretic text, we only have 1, 2, 3, 3.5. Okay, so it's very, very different. The Peshitta has got us so much more. The Peshitta explicitly integrates the theme of David twice sparing Saul's life from 1 Samuel into the chronicler's introduction of David's men. This frames the men of Ziklag not just as warriors, but as highly loyal followers who respect David's refusal to harm the anointed king. Very different. Let's see our other notes here. So the perspective of the chronicler. The books of Chronicles were written much later, post-exilic period, around the 4th century BC, offering a theological rereading of the history in Samuel and Kings. Right? So this is important to understand as well. 1st Chronicles, 2nd Chronicles, written after, quite a long time after 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings. 1st and 2nd Chronicles is considered to be almost like a commentary, or a midrash, if you will, of the earlier text. Excuse me. Okay. So in verses 1 and 2, the list begins with men from Benjamin, Saul's relatives. This highlights the fracturing of Saul's support base. The wow fact, the elite ambidextrous warriors. They could use both the right hand and the left in slinging stones and shooting arrows. Military history. Ambidextrous ambidexterity provided a significant tactical advantage in ancient warfare, allowing soldiers to attack from unexpected angles and complicating the enemy's defense. The tribe of Benjamin was renowned for this specialization. See Judges chapter 20, verse 16. All right. Okay, let's go back to 1 Chronicles chapter 12, verse 2 in the WEB Masoretic text. They were armed with bows, and they could use both the right hand and the left in slinging stones and shooting arrows from the bow. They were of Saul's relatives of the tribe of Benjamin. Verse 3. The chief was Ahiezer, then Joash, the sons of Shemaah, and the Gibeonite, or Gibeathite, Yeziel and Pelate, the sons of Azmaveth, Berekah, Yehu, the Anathothite, verse 4, Ishmaiah the Gibeonite, a mighty man among the 30 and a leader of the 30, Jeremiah, Yahaziel, Yohanan, Jozabad, and the Gederathite. Verse 5, Elusai, Yeremoth, Baaliah, Shamariah, Shephatiah, the Heraphite, Elkanah, Ishiah, Azarel, Joezer, and Yashobeam, the Korahites, and Yoelah, and Zebediah, the sons of Jehoram of Gedor. Verse 8. Some Gadites joined David in the stronghold in the wilderness, mighty men of valor, men trained for war, who could handle shield and spear, whose faces were like the faces of lions, and they were as swift as gazelles on the mountain. Wow. On the mountains. Ezer, the chief, Obadiah the second, Eliab the third, Mishmana the fourth, Jeremiah the fifth, Attai the sixth, Eliel the seventh, Yohanan the eighth, Elzabad the ninth, Jeremiah the 10th, and Machbani the 11th. These of the sons of Gad, that is, Gad, were captains of the army. He who was least was equal to 100, and the greatest to 1,000. These are those who went over the Jordan in the first month, when it had overflowed all its banks, and they put to flight all who lived in the valleys, both toward the east and toward the west. Couple things here, folks. The Peshitta, we have something different there. The Peshitta says in verse 15, so the Peshitta reads quite different. It concludes the description of the Gadites' prowess by adding the phrase about the purpose of the entire assembly. It says they came and assembled to David right here, and at Hebron to give him the kingdom of Shaul, so that the word of Samuel the prophet would be fulfilled, which he spoke from the mouth of Jehovah, the Lord Jehovah. So this theological justification is omitted. This whole entire phrase, this whole entire part of this passage here is not found in the Masoretic text, nor is it found in the Septuagint. So the Peshitta, Aramaic, Syriac, highlights the divine prophetic basis for David's kingship transition, linking the military assembly directly to the fulfillment of Samuel's prophecy. We'll go back to the Masoretic text, verse 16. Let's read our note over here first. So verse 15, crossing the Jordan, went over the Jordan in the first month when it had overflowed all its banks. Historical detail. The first month, Nisan, is the spring harvest when the Jordan River is at flood stage due to melting snows. Crossing it then was a remarkable feat of strength and commitment. See Joshua chapter 3. Okay, back to the text. Verse 16. Some of the children of Benjamin and Judah came to the stronghold to David. David went out to meet them and answered them, quote, "If you have come peaceably to help me, or to me to help me, my heart will be united with you. But if you have come to betray me to my adversaries, since there is no wrong in my hands, may the God of our fathers see this and rebuke it." Verse 18. Then the Spirit came on Amasai, who was chief of the 30, and he said, "We are yours, David, and on your side, you son of Jesse. Peace be to you, and peace be to your helpers, for your God helps you." Then David received them and made them captains of the band. All right. Talk about this for a moment. Verse 18, the Spirit came on Amasai. Literally, the Spirit clothed itself with Amasai. Isn't that awesome? It literally says the Spirit clothed itself with Amasai. Amazing. This is a powerful idiom. It signifies divine empowerment, conferring divine legitimacy upon the decision to support David. Wow. Back to the text. Verse 19. Some of Manasseh also joined David when he came with the Philistines against Saul to battle, but they didn't help him, for the Lord of the Philistines sent him away after consultation, saying, "He will desert to his master Saul to the jeopardy of our heads." Okay, so there is a manuscript variance here as well. In this, the WEB, the Masoretic text, and also in the Brenton, going down here to verse 19, you will see that it focuses on David being dismissed by the Philistines. But the Peshitta says, it adds something here. It says that the men of Manasseh hated him, right there in verse 19. And it goes further to suggest that so we shall go first. So it further suggests here that they are to plot to ambush and capture Saul alive in Ziklag. So this is a major difference between the manuscripts as well. So here the Peshitta introduces the concept of active treachery and extreme hatred towards Saul among David's Manasseh followers. This implies a complex and hostile political maneuver by David's allies, which is not present in the relatively simpler dismissal story found in the Septuagint and the Masoretic text. Verse 20, as he went to Ziklag, some from Manasseh joined him: Adnah, Yozabad, Yediel, Michael, Jozabad, Elihu, and Zilithai, captains of thousands who were of Manasseh. So this, if you compare it with the Brenton, we have some significant differences of the names, as well as the Peshitta as well. We have significant differences of the names. For example, the Peshitta has Zabur and Mankayal. That's not found in the other texts. The Septuagint has Rodiel and Samathi, not found in the other texts. So these variations in specific names mean that the exact historic identity of these captains is uncertain, depending on the manuscript you use. Verse 21, Masoretic text: they helped David against the band of raiders, for they were all mighty men of valor and were captains in the army. Verse 22, for from day to day men came from David to help him, until there was a great army, like God's army. So here again we have differences in the very last phrase, like God's army, in the Masoretic text, and also in the Septuagint, as the force of God. But in the Peshitta, the ancient Syriac text, it says in verse 22, in all day, in the daytime, they were entering before David to eat bread before him, because he loved them greatly. To eat bread before him. So this is really different. This changes the emphasis from the military divine magnitude of David's growing force to personal charisma and hospitality of David, which motivated his followers. Very, very different. Wow. Okay, so let's go back to 1 Samuel chapter 27. Got a few more verses there to read. 1 Samuel chapter 27, we'll read verses 8 through 12. Okay. David and his men went up and raided the Gershurites, the Girzites, and the Amalekites, for those were the inhabitants of the land who were of old on the way to Shur, even to the land of Egypt. David struck the land and saved no man or woman alive, and took away the sheep, the cattle, and the donkeys, and the camels, and the clothing. Then he returned and came to Achish. Achish said, "Against whom have you made a raid today?" David said, "Against the south of Judah, against the south of the Jerahmeelites, and against the south of the Kenites." Okay, so we have variations again, folks, especially in the names of these these tribes. Back in verse 8, so we have the Gershurites, Girzites, and Amalekites. Geshurites, Girzites, and Amalekites. The Peshitta has Gashur, Gedula, and Amalek. Somewhat similar. Okay, so, but it is different. We'll read verse 11. David saved neither man nor woman alive to bring them to Gath, saying, lest they should tell about us, saying, David did this, and this has been his way all the time he has lived in the country of the Philistines. Verse 12, Achish believed David, saying, he has made his people Israel utterly to abhor him. Therefore he will be my servant forever. Final notes. So in verses 11 and 10 and 11, the deception and the brutality, David lies to Achish, claiming to have attacked the Negev of Judah and allied groups like the Kenites. Verse 11, David said, save neither man nor woman alive. Analysis, this brutal policy, akin to harem, ensures there are no witnesses to expose his deception. This highlights the morally ambiguous realities of David's survival tactics. And in verse 12, we got Achish believes David has burned his bridges with Israel, securing his loyalty as a permanent Philistine vassal. David's deception is complete. Okay, folks. So that concludes our reading for tonight. Any final questions, comments, anything like that? Remember, this coming Sunday, we're going to start with our 3-day fast. It'll be Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And anybody who has any prayer requests, feel free to drop those prayer requests in the email here, ChristopherEnoch@proton.me, ChristopherEnoch@proton.me, and we'll pray for you during the fast. All right. Okay. All right, folks. Well, if you haven't already, please leave a like, subscribe, and follow. If you're new here, we do this every single day, going through the scriptures, digging into the historical, the cultural, the manuscript, all these different things that we're doing, historical context, cultural context, the scholarly analysis, and the manuscript variations. So if this is at all interesting to you, please make sure you're following, make sure you're subscribed. All right, folks, and if you are moved, if you would like to support the channel, you can do that a number of ways. You can do that by joining the YouTube channel and become a member. Click that join button underneath, or the link in the description as well. Or you can support on Subscribestar. The link is also in the description, as well as a PayPal address as well. All right, thank you guys. And thank you again for those of you who are supporting. It's much needed and appreciated. Blessings to you. Seek the Lord says, thank you, Brother Christopher. God bless you and all here richly and abundantly. See you tomorrow. Thank you, Seek the Lord. God bless you more. Blessings multiplied to you and your family. Al says, thank you always for amazing studies and show more of the word. Shalom, everyone who came to support. Have a great night and God bless. Thank you, Al. You too. Have a great night. God bless you. Blessings upon you and your family. Okay, folks. So we'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. New York time. Chipmunk says, thank you, Christopher, for the study. Many blessings to you and family. Good health, comfort, and healing to all. Thank you again, Chipmunk. Blessings multiplied back to you and yours. Keep calling on him, and he will show you great and mighty things, things that you don't know, Jeremiah 33:3. Love you guys. Good health, long life to you. I pray the Lord bless you and keep you, make his face to shine upon you, lift up his countenance upon you, and give you wonderful, wonderful shalom. Amen, amen. We'll see you guys tomorrow.